Good morning. Good morning. We are going to give people a little bit of time to join. Happy Sunday, everyone. As you join, I'd love for you to say hi in chat just so I know who's here and so I can say hi. I know everybody did some really good goal setting next week, so I'd love to hear how everybody's weeks went. So I'm really looking forward to our check in. Good morning. Good morning. I'm on my second coffee. No Red Bull for me today. Sometimes I'm like, well, if I'm feeling tired, maybe I'll just let myself feel tired. All right. I know a lot of folks end up watching this on replay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So, just thank you so much for joining and spending time on this and going through this process with me. I'm really excited about what we're doing here, and I hope you are too. I love hearing your stories and your successes and your challenges, especially. So I'm really, really proud of you for taking this time for yourself because I think that reflection is such an important tool for learning as we move forward. And then also taking that reflection and leveraging it to be intentional about the upcoming week is genuinely how we build the lives we want, which is what we're all about here. All right, so let's go ahead and start our check in. And so, as you reflect back on last week, what are your successes? What are you proud of from last week? And I would love for you to write this down in your journal, on your worksheet, in your notes, as always. And I'd also love to hear in chat what your wins were for last week so that we can celebrate together. As you're thinking about that, I'd love to share one of my successes with you. I know I mentioned that I am working on doing more group activities. And so while I've been consistent with my workouts, I have managed to work in group yoga. So I did go to a group yoga class on Monday, and then I went to another one was that yesterday? Yes, that was yesterday. And so I'm going to make this a regular part of my schedule. I think that group activities are really important. And especially after COVID, it was so easy to stay at home since I work from home. But that was one of my big wins and successes is getting myself out there and going to a group yoga class. And I really enjoyed it. Like once I kind of busted through that bubble, it's a lot easier. And I think a lot of things are like that. I think we make a lot of things harder on ourselves than they need to be. That's one of my learnings from this week. So, yes, definitely think about your successes. I'd love to hear them in chat. I know that this is a bit of a crazy week because everybody's winding down for the holidays, and that's okay. You got to do what you got to do. So, if you're just like surviving in this moment, that's totally fine too. Do whatever you need to do because it is very hard to wrap up the last week of work before starting the Christmas holiday. And I know that's where a lot of people are right now in their lives. Okay, so that was our first check-in question as we reflect back on last week. And our next check-in question was, how did you feel? How did you feel last week as you went through the week? Looking back, What really stands out to you in terms of how you felt? This is an important part of checking in with yourself. I know feelings, but yes, definitely check in with how did you feel last week? And then ask yourself, how come? Like, where was that coming from? So, if you notice that it's a feeling that you might be a little uncomfortable with, I think it's an important thing to understand why. Where did that come from? Even if it's something where it was a good feeling, what made that feel good last week? So, definitely think about this, take a few moments and journal about it. How did you feel last week? And where did that feeling come from? And looking back on that feeling, how do you feel about that now? All right. Our next reflection question for last week is, did you take enough time for you? Because again, it's the holiday season. It's easy to get super busy with wrapping up things at work and preparing for the holidays. So I'd love for you to ask yourself, did you take enough time for yourself last week? And especially for those of us who, if you have family and kids, that's even harder because, you get caught up in doing things for everybody else. So I want to make sure you're taking time for you. So did you do enough for yourself last week? All right, our next reflection question, and this is our last one as we look back on last week, is what are any learnings or takeaways that you had from the last week? Because I know we talked at the beginning of the week about checking in with yourself throughout the week and maybe taking some notes. So, as you reflect back, what's a learning or takeaway that you can think of today? Or what learnings or takeaways did you kind of collect and jot down during the week? I'd love to have you put this as part of your notebook, your workbook, anything that you're doing to track everything, and just really note down, what did you learn? What were your takeaways? Even if it's something you've learned before, there's some things that I have to keep relearning all the time, and I think that's okay. So if it's something that you've learned before and you learned it again this week, it's still worth noting, because sometimes those are the things that we do need to remind ourselves of. All right, I'll give you another minute for these reflections. And if you're just joining, the reflections for last week that we've gone through so far are, what are your, biggest successes or wins that you want to make sure that you celebrate with yourself and with us, if you don't mind putting them in the chat or in the comments if you're watching this on replay. And how did you feel last week? And where did that feeling come from? That's our second reflection question. And did you take enough time for you last week? It's really easy not to. I have had many times in my life where I didn't. So, did you take enough time for you last week? And knowing all of that and looking back on the week as a whole, what learnings or takeaways do you have from last week? I'm trying to make that light behind me less egregious. All right, so let's move into thinking about next week. And this is, the part where I remind you that goals aren't just about work. What we're doing here is building a real sustainable life that we can all love and enjoy for ourselves, which looks very individual. And so productivity isn't just about work. Productivity is about what you're doing to build a life that you can love. And so as you think about that, and I go through these questions for next week, remember, yes, of course, work is important. So I'm not saying discount that, but don't only think about work as I ask you these questions for next week. Knowing where we are in the holiday season and being at the end of the year, what is the one most important thing that you need to make sure you do next week? Just pick one. What is the one most important thing that you need to do next week? And that can be in any of life's dimensions: work, family, spirituality, self care, relationships, fun, holiday prep, whatever you want it to be. What's the one most important thing you need to make sure you do next week? For me, I'd say the one most important thing that I'm doing next week is finishing the prep for the end of year reflection. I've accelerated my own end of year reflection so that I can be fully present in our workshop that we're doing at the end of the year. And so next week, normally I'd be wrapping up my own reflection, but yes, there's some things I'm still doing and reflecting on. But the most important thing is to finish the prep for that session. It's going to be really, really fun. I'm looking forward to it. And then our second prompt for next week is, if you look ahead to next week, how are you going to apply your learnings from last week? That could be doing something different. That could be removing something from your week. That could be adding in a new behavior. But as you reflect back on those learnings from last week, how will you apply them to next week? And it's okay if the answer is, I'm waiting till the new year to apply any learnings. That's totally fine too. Because that's also a learning, which is that I can't do anything differently right now. I need to wait until January. That's totally an okay answer. And if you're just joining, we are going through our goal setting for next week. Our first question was, what's the one most important thing you need to accomplish this week in any dimension or area of your life? The second question is, how are you applying the learnings from last week to this week that's coming up? And definitely jot it down in your journal or workbook, but I would love to hear in the chat or in the comments, because I do like knowing how it went when we talk the next time. All right, our third question for next week, as you look ahead and you set your goals, what is one thing that you're doing for yourself next week? So as you look ahead to next week, what is one thing that you are committing to do for you? That could be the same thing as answers number 1 or 2, that's okay, but put it in the context of something that you're doing for yourself. It's also okay if it's a completely net new thing, but what is one thing you are going to make sure you do for yourself this upcoming week? It can already be a regular behavior and you're just saying, "I'm going to make sure I keep doing that." That's all right, but I would challenge you to think, is there something extra you need to do for yourself or can do for yourself next week? Or let's use a little language shift that I've been practicing that I've heard online, which is, what is one thing I get to do for myself? Which definitely shifts the language to one of empowerment and choice. What is one thing I can and get to do for myself next week? If you'll notice, I am mixing up some of these prompts. The intention here is to just get us to think and talk differently about how we are planning and setting goals for ourselves, and just to keep it a little bit fresh and to make sure we don't fall into habits as we do this, because it is important to make sure that we don't have tunnel vision as we look ahead. All right, so our final goal setting question for next week is, how are you planning on winding down for the holidays? I know a lot of us are in the position where we do tend to take a break over the holidays from work. And so, what are you doing to make sure that you're winding down appropriately so that you do have some space to rest during the holiday season? I just realized that this is a good question for me too. I know I've been thinking about how I'm winding down work and like, hey, what are those last things I need to check off my list to feel like I'm really able to check out? So I'm going out of town next weekend. And I think that, just making sure I'm ready for the end of year reflection. I finished my filming my last video. So just making sure I'm ready for that end of year reflection, then I can wind down and really just give myself some space at the end of the year. And remember, give yourself grace. It is a very, very busy time of year. It's totally okay. I would not be overly ambitious. As you can tell, the goals that we're setting for this week are not about getting a ton of things done. It's about getting the right things done. All right, so let's shift into calendaring. And so if you take the goals you set for this week, I am going to ask you to pull up your work or school calendar and then also maintain your separate calendar for, the productivity work that we're doing. And as you look ahead to the upcoming week, I'm going to even more strongly recommend that you cancel or reschedule any unnecessary meetings, kind of ask yourself, does this really need to be done? Because you have a list of things that you know you need to be doing. And when you look at the rest of the things that are already on your calendar with that lens, that might help you make some decisions about curating your calendar a little bit. Always my favorite challenge, but yes, look at your existing work or school calendar, see what you can curate if it doesn't serve your needs and if it isn't really necessary in this week before we get ready for the holidays, and then also work on calendaring the goals that we just set for the upcoming week. So take some time now. Sorry, my cat's playing with the Christmas ornaments. Say, take some time now, look at the calendars. This is the calendaring section of the session. Boy, is that a tongue twister? One of the things that I definitely noticed throughout the years is it's so interesting how much unnecessary meetings and things clog up our calendars, and it makes it harder to do the necessary and important things. So we get so stressed about them, but it's because there's a lot of noise in the system. There's a lot of noise in the machine. So this is a really great time to reflect on what is unnecessary that you can remove so that you can better serve the things that are the most important. Think of it as a gift you're giving yourself for the holiday season. As you look at your calendars, make sure that you're giving yourself room to breathe through the week. Make sure that you're truly giving yourself time to do the things that you said are the most important for your goals. Overscheduling can really just drain the joy out of our work in our lives, and that's not good. So take this time to really give yourself space in your calendar as you plan out the upcoming week. And as you do that, as always, I would love it if you dropped in a chat anything that you are committing to next week so that we can celebrate that together when we meet again. I love being able to celebrate everybody's successes. I'm going to give you a few more minutes for the calendaring part. And then as you're calendaring, I do want to mention that this is our last productivity session for 2024. And I'm very excited to see all of you again in 2025. But, you know, I know that everybody's going to be very distracted during the holidays and hopefully doing some self reflection as well as spending time with family and resting and enjoying yourselves. So, this will be our last productivity session for the year. and then we will start up again in January. And in the meantime, to help prepare for January, we have our end of year reflection on December 27th. That is a Friday. It's at 3 p.m. Central. I know most of y'all are going to be off work. Hopefully, you can take, an hour to spend really investing in yourself to set up a strong 2025. I'm really excited about the session on the 27th. It is going to be a guided session where we reflect back on the previous year. We get very intentional about thinking about what's important and what matters for 2025. And we set learning goals, developmental goals, and also some life goals. So, really excited about it. Again, it's December 27th at 3 p.m. Central. The link is actually in the description. So, if you click on the link in the description, you can then go and have it notify you when the live starts, like this one does. But I'd love for you, as you're calendaring, to put this on your calendar for December 27th. It's going to be a great session. It is kind of a distilled version of the reflection I do every year, but it's also multidimensional. So, very excited about it. All right, as you're winding up the calendaring work, I just want you to take a moment to be proud of yourself that you spent this time today thinking back on last week, setting up a strong next week. I also just want you to be very mindful about giving yourself grace during the holiday season because we all know how crazy it can get. Just know you're doing your best. Be proud of anything that you can get done next week and over the next couple weeks. And, as you do take time to think about what kind of life you're building for yourself and your family, really take the time to sit down and plan out what's important for you next year. And if you do it with me in our live session, great. If not, I'll have a workbook up on Etsy if you're not able to make that live session or watch the replay. But it's going to be an incredible opportunity. And we're calling this part of our new Life by Design series. And so doing a reflection and setting some intentions for next year is going to be a great way to start off your Life by Design so that you can have an amazing 2025. So thank you so much for joining today. Thank you for watching. I know a lot of you end up watching later. Really proud of you for taking this time to think about what matters most and how to make sure that you are living that through your actions and realizing your goals. And I can't wait to see you all on the 27th for our Life by Design end of year reflection and goal setting for 2025. Thanks, everybody. Have an amazing Sunday. Have an amazing holiday. Check in with me in the meantime. Leave me comments. I'd love to hear from you guys about how your week goes. And make sure to check in with yourself throughout the week as well. So have an incredible week, an amazing holiday, and I will see you guys on the 27th for our end of year reflection. Thank you so much. Bye.